So emotions flow. I say best is go with the flow, go with how the emotion flows with you. But yes, there's a catch here. You definitely need to feel your emotions, but how long you want to hold on to those emotions is completely an individual's perspective.
Hello and welcome to Shared.Care's What is Manly radio show and podcast. Men feel more lonely, lost, and not useful in society than ever in history. Males are not attaching to school, work, or women. What it means to be a man appears lost. Is there a framework for being manly that we can unearth?
Welcome to Share.Care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.Care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.Care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello, Simran. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. I'm very excited to talk to you across the pond in India. You're in India, I'm in Melbourne. It's late at night here, and it's not so late for you. You're over in India at this time.
Mhm. Yeah, likewise, I'm excited to have a conversation with you as well. Let's see how we can move forward.
Yeah, exactly. And it's wonderful that we can do that. I know COVID was quite traumatic for a number of reasons, but the fact that it opened us up to be able to do things in a different way and have these conversations that we probably otherwise wouldn't have had. And I don't know about you, but for me, I've made so many friends around the world that I may not have met before because we now are quite comfortable doing these type of conversations. How has that experience been for you?
No, I totally agree because I would say I started working when COVID hit. So my entire interaction has been online with clients or companies or organizations. It's been almost online. And I find it quite comfortable because you can reach a larger audience in that perspective.
Yeah. And so you found it more comfortable. What made it more comfortable talking online?
If I personally go to the profession that I'm in, there are people who are more comfortable online because then they don't have to show their face. They don't have to be vulnerable in front of someone else. So they can switch off their video and have a therapy session. They can maintain their anonymity. So that becomes from their own comfort zone, from their own houses. They don't have to move out for help. So that becomes much easier for them.
I love that. So they can open up a lot more. And from that perspective,
Um,
just to give the audience the background as well, we've got Simran Parekh, if I've pronounced that correctly, and she's a counseling
that's
psychologist,
perfect.
a certified CBT practitioner. She's also a content writer and a guest speaker, and she is all about making other people feel great and improving their lives, which is wonderful to have your perspective on this topic of what we're talking about being what is manly, because there's a lot of men out there today that are lost, they're lonely, and they don't feel useful in society. What have you seen, if we start more broadly, what have you seen from that perspective, and how is that affecting men?
I completely agree to what you said because there's a concept around being a man or being manly where there is a stigma attached that, men do not show their emotions. Men do not react this way. Men should do this, men should do that. So there are a lot of do's and don'ts in terms of emotional stability of men.
Hmm.
So I feel that that's opening up a little bit, but not entirely because we've been brought up in an environment where they restrict their emotions. They have to be strong. They have to maintain a strong physical front, even if they are feeling emotional or they feel exhausted of something. There are very little men I see who express their emotions. Like you might have also had that encounter where you want to speak out, you want to express yourself, but somehow you don't know how to put that in words.
Mm. Yeah, it's an interesting one that you've mentioned there. Is that juxtaposed? Because I hear some men talk about that, how they women that they say that want them to express their emotions, but then when they do express their emotions, they say you're being too mushy, and I need a strong man. Where's the line there? How much is too much emotion?
Yeah, I say like there's a not. I feel there's no line to an emotion because it's coming from within. Be it a
Mm-hmm.
male, be it a female, or be it a kid, for that example.
Mm,
Uh, it's just an emotion that's building inside your body, inside your system. So you cannot control or say that no, you've done an hour of crying, now you can't cry anymore, or you've cribbed for an hour, so now you can't crib anymore.
yeah.
It happens, it's a process. So emotions flow. I say best is go with the flow, go with how the emotion flows with you. But yes, there's a catch here. You definitely need to feel your emotions, but how long you want to hold on to those emotions is completely an individual's perspective.
Mm. So what it is, if I'm hearing you correctly, is you're saying that if you've got these emotions, you need to be able to deal with them in an effective way so that it's productive for you as a person moving forward. Am I understanding that
Yes.
correctly?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does someone do that? If you're taught not to express your emotions, I guess from my side of things, the growing up that I had, because I had a fairly strong mother, and I
Mm.
was taught I had a bit of a balance there. And then even though I was in the special forces, I was posted to the special forces. What I
Okay.
don't think I fully understood was, I mean, we did do a psychological test, and all the guys there that I worked with could express emotions. If they had a problem, they could ask for help.
Mhm.
And when I look back at it, you had to be able to do that role. It was very, very emotionally draining. And if you didn't have a release for that, you were going to break down. And I think, I don't remember the psych test that we did when we went, but my guess is that they were testing to see whether you had that disposition, to see whether you could actually manage that kind of emotional stress. But not everybody has that. So I think my experience was biased in that sense. So I was around men that actually could
Mm.
express emotions, and they could ask for help. But how does someone who has been brought up with not having that experience being able to actually then go learn to express those feelings and feel safe doing it?
Honestly, it's really difficult for someone to start, say, for example, at an age of 24 or 25, or at a higher age, start expressing their emotions, which they've not done through past 20 years of their life.
Mhm.
Because they've been brought up in an environment where you suppress your emotions or where men don't show emotions.
Mm,
So when you come, because see what happens is you pile up your emotions, you suppress your emotions, but then later on at a stage there'll be a tiny argument or a small issue, and the entire emotions of these piled up years will come out,
mm,
which will burst out maybe like a volcano.
yeah,
So then people will think that, on such a small thing, why so many emotions?
mm,
Why such an outburst? But then they fail to understand that it is not today's argument or today's concern which is causing this. It's a piled up, pent up emotions box
yeah,
which has never been opened. So coming back to your question, how to do it, maybe, create an environment for your kids, be it of any gender, that you can come and tell us how you're feeling. Or maybe just start by asking, how did you feel throughout the day?
mm,
Maybe two or three emotions. Maybe like, how was your day? We generally say our day was good, but how did we feel? We forget to say that.
yes.
Can you relate?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great analogy. What you're saying is how did, taking that step further and having that ability to ask those questions and allow a person to express that freely without judgment, if what I'm hearing is correct. You want to create that safe space. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, create a safe space and allow them to express their emotions. Like, I'll just take a small example. Like if a kid is hurt by, say, the floor or some furniture, we tend to hit the furniture back. We tend to say that it's the furniture's fault and you don't need to cry about it. Or something similar, like if something's happening to the kid, you start blaming the other person or the other thing so that the kid feels better and he or she doesn't have to express his emotions. But then at that early stage, the child learns that it's not my fault. I don't need to cry or I don't need to express my emotions. So a lot of childhood, parenting, environment, everything has a role in how you grow up.
Yeah. How do we make that assessment as to which is enough emotions and which is too much? I've had that when my son was growing up. He was running along and he fell over. He was about to cry. I said, everything will be fine. It'll be no problem. And then he just went, oh, and then went on and played as though nothing had happened. How much do we need to balance that with going, okay, yes, I'm feeling something, I need to express it, but also to being realistic about what the circumstance is as well.
Correct. Let's take your example, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
about your son. He fell down, and you could have, you said you did great that, it's okay, you've got hurt. But at least hear him out. Maybe say, okay, you've got hurt. I understand that you've got hurt. But if you put a band aid or if we,
Mm.
fix it, you'll feel better.
Mm.
So maybe take it this route rather than saying, okay, it will be fine.
Mm.
He also knows it will be fine. But maybe what the other person wants to hear, whether it's a child, adolescent, or
Mm.
an adult, is that I understand that you're hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I understand your feelings. I validate your feelings.
Yeah. So what you're talking about there is validating a feeling that might be there. So and enabling that to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do we deal with that from a perspective of when we're talking about emotions as well? Let's say, in a real life situation, and I had this experience myself where I was applying for a job. It was a job that I really, really wanted to get, and I thought, I'll get this job, no problem. And I loved the firm, and everything was, well, I thought I did at the time, and so I went there, had a suit, went and presented myself, walked out of there feeling fantastic. Thinking, yeah, I've got this. And then 2 days later, I got a phone call, and it wasn't the phone call I was expecting. It was like, thank you, but no thank you. And from that perspective, it's okay. I was upset about that I didn't get the job. At that time, I drank a little bit, so I had a few drinks, and then after feeling sorry for myself, I picked myself up a few days later and got on and move forward with that. How much of that do we need to have this balance of going, okay, life is not always going to be, everything in all roses and everything's going to go exactly the way we want. How do we balance that, and how do we work out how to go through that? Okay, I didn't get what I wanted. I'm upset with that. And then I need to reframe and move forward.
Correct. So, see, everyone has their own process, own timeline of going through the emotions or going through a situation.
Mm.
But when we know, like, if it's a job loss, maybe you can think about it that why did I face rejection, or why did this happen to me? Maybe why me questions as well do come
Mm.
in. So those can go on for 1 day, 2 days, a week. But then when you start doubting your capabilities, like,
Mm.
am I not good enough? Do I not put in good efforts? Or why am I not getting a job? Why are others doing better? So where that comparison, self-doubt, a lack in confidence comes in, you need to realize that you need to focus on the present. You need
Mm.
to focus on the here and now of the situation. You need to focus on, okay, I haven't got this job. I feel maybe a little bad about it because I was expecting to get it. But
Mhm.
now what next can I do? Like basically not focusing on the problem or the concern or the situation, rather focusing on how to overcome that situation or how
Mm.
can we resolve this concern.
Mm.
So I think the maximum percentage of people around the world, correct me if I'm wrong, do focus mainly on the problem.
Mhm.
They forget that we need to find a solution to this.
I love it. And I heard two different words there in context. You mentioned why. And from what I understand, why is not a great question to ask. Why me? Why did this happen? Whereas then you used another word, how. How can I do this? How can I do that? Is that part of the shift that you can make? Is change your self-talk and ask yourself different questions?
Yes, self-talk, I would say, is really important in today's time with everyone. Like at
Mm.
least I would say give 10 minutes or 15 minutes on a daily basis for self-introspection. Like
Mm.
even if you don't have anything, just sit with yourself and uh, reassess how your day went. Maybe say 2 to 3 lines of gratitude. What did you achieve today? So that is really important. And that makes us realize that even if someone else is not validating our feelings, someone else is not validating our capabilities, and someone else is not saying that, okay, I'm proud of you, you can tell that to yourself. So your
Mm.
self belief and the concept of who you are needs to be very strong, I would say, and clear within yourself.
So, and what you're talking about there, when you mentioned there's a couple of things I want to cover off here. One is that self-esteem component. And my understanding and is that self-esteem is how you think about yourself regardless of what's happening, and whether you basically just like yourself regardless. And you might mess something up and you go, well, that's a behavior. That's not me. That's not my identity. I did what I did, and I didn't do that very well, but I'm still a good person. I'm going to give it another shot. Is that an attitude that we need to have? Do we need to separate the identity of who we think we are from our behaviors?
Yes, I would say to some extent, there's a realistic you, like the one who you are, and there's an idealistic you.
Mhm.
Like, so there are two different selves, real self and ideal self. Real self is who you think you are today.
Mm.
Maybe I look a certain way. My body type is a certain physical structure. I'm working in a certain organization at a certain designation. This is all who I am. My ideal self would be who I want to become.
Mm.
So there's a difference. And when there's a conflict between the real self and ideal self, the issues of self esteem or self confidence start.
Mhm.
Because then again, as I said, you try to doubt yourself. You tend to forget who you are. So I always say never attach your self confidence or self esteem or self belief to a person, object, or an individual or a situation. Because
Mhm.
these all things are temporary. But what you think of yourself is permanent.
Mm.
Like say for example, even if not permanent, is it's who you are. So say for example, if today you get rejected or laid off from a job and you've attached your entire self-worth with that job, you'll feel worthless.
Mhm.
So that's what I say not to do. Do not attach your self-worth, complete self-worth, with some particular object, situation, opportunity, or any individual, because these things can come and go.
Mm. So
And
how do you not attach, if you say you don't get that job, how do you not attach your self-worth to not getting that job? How do you tell yourself, "Oh, look, I didn't get the job, but hey, yeah, I'm great."
I know that's difficult to do, but then, of course, you will feel for a day or two. Even I would feel bad if I'm rejected.
Mm.
That's normal human tendency.
Mhm.
But as I said earlier, also in the start, how long do I want to hold on to this emotion is up to me. Do I start thinking or questioning my capabilities? Because, see, maybe the expectations of me from that job and the expectations of the opportunity do not match.
Mhm.
Maybe we feel that, maybe the person feels that I am a good candidate but not fit for their role.
Mhm.
Maybe there are thousands of reasons why you can be rejected. You don't have to take it that I am not good enough, so I didn't get the job. You need to believe in your capabilities. Self belief is really needed in terms of that, no, I will put in an extra effort. Maybe this time things didn't go right, but I'll try again.
Mm. So from that perspective, it is having a wider perspective of saying, well, okay, I didn't get the job, but as you mentioned, there's 1,000 reasons why I might not have got that job. Is it keeping that perspective in the reality, or in your reality, I should say, that there are multiple reasons as to why you didn't get the job, and you shouldn't beat yourself up over the fact that it's you. It could, maybe it's not you, and maybe there's a wider reason.
Yeah. And also maybe that, see, I wouldn't say always blame the other person. Maybe try to be realistic and understand where things went wrong. If you didn't get the job, try to understand, maybe get a feedback from them, like, why didn't they, or a reasoning, why did they not go ahead or move forward with your application, and then start working towards it. And if you feel it's a reason which is not in your control, which you cannot change or modify, then accept the situation that, okay, this is there. I think this is not in my control. I cannot modify or change it. So let's move on from here.
Yeah, I love that. And coming back to uh, that example I put forward where I didn't get that job, as it turned out, I ended up getting a job with another firm, and the industry that I was working in was a very small industry. The firm that rejected me were actually known as sharks, and they weren't actually, they're a very dodgy firm to end up working for. The fact that I didn't get that job was serving me, because had I got that job, I would have been tainted with that image as well. But I ended up working for another firm. The job that I got was with a firm that was actually very reputable, and the partners of that firm were, very, very well known and very well regarded. So it served me to not get that job, even though I didn't understand at the time.
See, everything happens for a reason.
Is that, and is it that perspective as well, having that that attitude, as you just said, of everything happens for a reason. I may not know why, but there is a reason for this, and I may find out one day, or I may never find out, but there is a reason for it.
Yeah, I strongly believe that whatever happens in one's life, situations, people entering a person's life, they come with a reason. They are there for you for a reason. Maybe if you are in a difficult period, a difficult time, or a tough situation, that situation has come to you so that you learn certain things. Like, say, for example, if you are in a toxic relationship
Mm-hmm.
where things are not working out. So rather than thinking that in the past that I was in a toxic relationship, I don't know whether I'll find a better relationship now or not. Just try to learn that now you've learned that what not to find in a partner. That taught you how a toxic relationship looks like, and that increased your self-esteem. That now I will stand up for myself.
I love
I
that.
know this all is sorry. I know all of this is sounding very easy and to hear, but to do it practically, it's really difficult.
And what you're pointing out there, I relate to as well. That in my past, I've been in some toxic relationships, or been with people that were toxic, and I accepted that. And part of that was my own journey of my self-worth, where then I recognized it, but two, I said to myself, well, I'm not going to be treated that way. And I didn't, make a big fuss about it. It was, I recognized that the person was like that, and said, well, that's not for me, because I have a standard that's acceptable. Is that the kind of journey we need to go through? It's recognizing that, what we've got in life, we got for whatever reason we've got up to that point, but then recognizing and using that, as you said, everything happens for a reason. How can I use it to help me move forward?
Yeah, so in the process of when we talk about emotions or moving ahead from a situation, there are four steps involved. Maybe say awareness, acceptance,
Mhm.
feeling the emotions or expressing the emotions, and lastly, letting it go. So this process is such that most of the people do have the first step already done because they're aware of the situation. They're
Mhm.
aware what's going around. But where they find difficulty is in the second and third step, which is somewhere interlinked, acceptance and expressing their emotions. So basically, you need to first be aware that, okay, this is a feeling that I'm having, this is an emotion that I'm feeling. Now, how do I express it? How do I, put it in words? Maybe talk to the person directly who's hurt you or with whom the situation is. If you can't do that, maybe talk to yourself. Maybe express it in the form of journaling. Maybe do it in some other ways, diverting your mind, talking to a friend. There
Mhm.
are thousands of ways where you can, express your emotions. So once you express your emotions fully, 100%, like if you're feeling angry and if you want to shout, shout it out. Once
Mm,
you're done that, you will see that you're in a more better mental space. And then you'll be easily able to accept that I was angry. But before you take out that anger, you might notice that nobody says that I'm angry. They won't accept the fact that I was angry or I am in a state of rage.
mhm,
So once you've expressed the emotions, your thought is clear. Because when we are in the peak of our emotions, our judgment gets clouded
mm,
by our emotions. We cannot think clearly. But once we felt the emotions, we've expressed the emotions, we see there's a clarity in thought. We are less confused. We
mm,
can think that, okay, whether I want to choose path A, path B, or altogether a new path. So there comes acceptance and there comes letting it go. Okay, now this has happened. I accept the situation, I accept the emotions, and I'm ready to move on from here.
mm. I read somewhere that you can write down those experiences on a piece of paper and then put a match to it or a blowtorch to it and blow it away. Does that work?
It's again individual basis. I do suggest writing, but whether you want to blow it up, whether you want to reread it, revisit it, or whether you want to send it to the person with whom it's associated, it's completely your choice. People do tear it and flush it. People do, as you said, blow it up. So whatever makes them feel better.
Fair enough. And how much of that emotion is our own reflection of what we've got going inside us as opposed to what the other person is doing? Because you might have two people experience the same thing and they'll react differently. And I'm putting that in the context of when someone says, for example, I'm offended. What you've said offended me. Is that,
Hmm.
is it more what the person said was offensive or more your interpretation of it and how you've dealt with that? Because I've seen where people have one person has said something, one person's been offended, another person hasn't. Go to a comedy show and someone will find the joke highly offensive and other people will just laugh at it and think it's funny. Is it our own interpretation which creates that heightened emotion, shall we say?
Great question, I would say, because
Thank you. I have a
this
reputation.
involves this involves a lot of perception, which I believe in, that how you perceive a situation uh, is a lot how you react to it. As
Mm,
you said correctly, if you're in a comedy show, a joke might be offensive to you, and the same joke might not be offensive for someone else. So it's your own thought process, how you perceive that joke. Would you take it personally or would you take it just casually?
mhm,
It's up to you. But I would also give some credit to what the person is saying,
mhm,
like the words, choice of words, the tonality, the speech, modulation, everything. If it's normal, I mean, I wouldn't say there's something normal and abnormal, but if it is something that's put it correctly, or it's something that we can take it lightly, and then that the person is getting offended, it's completely how you see it. I would say it's perception, it's within how you take it. Like today, I might get angry on certain situation, but similarly, if my friend is put in the same situation, she might not get angry.
mm. How much of that is circumstantial as well? For example, using that comedy situation, if you go to a comedy show knowing the
Mm.
person's going to tell offensive jokes and then you're offended, uh, I I would suggest that's probably more on you from that perspective because you walked into a situation which you knowingly knew was going to be a certain type, and then you actually go there to be offended. That's kind of like, to me, you're slamming your fingers in car doors and trying to enjoy it. If you know it's going to be that situation. Is it circumstantial? Because if you're in a serious debate, so to speak, and then someone starts making personal attacks, that might be a,
Mhm.
a basis where you go, hang on a minute, that's inappropriate. And what you're doing is offensive because that's not the framework of what we're doing here. We're having an intellectual debate, and now you're bringing it down to personal attacks. Is that where we need to adjust how we interpret different things?
Yes, you've put it very correctly. Like if we take the example of a comedy show, you know that that comic or that individual has a reputation. You've
Mm,
seen their videos or shows, or you've heard about that person. So of course, he makes a certain type of jokes, a certain type of show, a certain type of language would be used. And
Mm,
if you walk into it and then you say that I'm offended, then somehow I think 50 to 80% it's on you, because you knew what you're walking into. Like today, if you go for a vacation on a hill station and you freeze, that's not the hill station's fault. It's basically you went in a winter season, or it's you who decided to go ahead with it.
mm,
So that's you. But in the second situation, when you are in a debate, an intellectual conversation has to happen, and the other person is bringing in personal opinions, you can always point it out by saying that, this is not correct in this particular situation. This is not ideal for the current conversation.
mhm. And where does emotional intelligence play into this? And I'll use some examples there as well. I mean, I deal a lot with negotiations, and I had an experience where there was an elderly gentleman, and he was a grumpy old guy. There was some choice four-letter words that were used to describe him before we met, and when I met him, he kind of lived up to that reputation. He was very difficult to work with, and he would do some things which are really. And I at the time I was the suit that I had on, I wasn't wearing a vest. I was wearing braces, and we were sitting there, and was not sitting, we were standing talking, and he was there, and he and he actually grabbed my braces and flicked them while we were talking. And, obviously that's invading my personal space, and I could have reacted,
Oh,
but I didn't react at all. I just continued the conversation and completely ignored it. And he literally stopped and he goes, what you're wearing, the braces there, they look really good. And I wish I had the courage to wear braces like you do, because they look great. And it was really
hmm.
interesting that if I had reacted and got offended by that, so to speak, or said how dare you, or whatever, we never would have had that conversation. But because I didn't react, I didn't emotionally get involved in it. I just went, meh, whatever. It's not for me. It wasn't. I'm 6 foot, so it really wasn't a threatening situation to me. Um, and and the fact that I didn't react, and that allowed him time to process what he'd done, and then he went, actually, this is the situation, and he opened up. How much can emotional intelligence play in those kind of circumstances where we're taught, in a way, taught to react a certain way, but if we don't react that way, it creates a different dynamic in the conversation?
See, I would say all of this is a lot of hypothetical and situational,
Mm,
because the situation that you're in depends how you react to it. Like, say, for example, if you're meeting a friend whom you've known for a long period of time, and
mm,
that friend reacts or acts unusually, at that point of time, it's necessary to call that out, because
mm,
this person is not uh, what he acted like right now, he or she. But if you're meeting someone for the first time or maybe second time, give them space. Do not judge immediately that, oh
mm,
no, this person is like that. I don't like him. I want to maintain distance. If you don't like him, you don't have to show it in your actions. Maybe just do need basis, work basis, and move on.
mm,
So it's again, as I said, depending on how long you've known the person, how is the relationship with that person. Because in friends, there's all fun, everything's going on.
mm,
So that's there. But if you're meeting professionally, you need to, of course, draw a line where the space of personal and professional should not be mixed,
mhm.
and maybe give them a time. I think you could have reacted in your situation because you were meeting them for the first time. So maybe you could have reacted stating that, this is coming into my private space.
Yeah. Sorry, to clarify, that wasn't the first meeting we had. We had some conversations before that. But from that perspective, when we're talking about emotional intelligence and your ability to control your emotions in situations and
Mm.
actually step above that, and I know from one of the programs I have called Negotiation Magic, which is a high-level negotiation course, one of the things we do teach people is about emotional control, and people that don't have emotional control, and actually how to manage that. Now, that's some very powerful in human interaction technologies that you can actually manipulate people quite, especially if you don't have emotional control. Now, obviously, we're doing it from a space of integrity, but there are other people that have that skill that don't. So how, you could easily be manipulated if you're not aware of your emotions and how to manage your own emotional IQ or EQ. How does someone learn that emotional intelligence to be able to not react and not be actually then controlled by somebody else?
Okay. So, see, it's not about how you learn to express or control your emotions, because I believe that you shouldn't control too much of your emotions, neither should you express too much. There should be a balance so that you can, run in the society. You can live in the society.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if I take an example of a professional example, you're very angry at your supervisor or your leader or your manager, someone above you in authority.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, you can't go and have an argument with them. You can't show your anger to them. Otherwise, you're fired, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But how to channelize it? Maybe the next day you can put it in a more assertive conversation that these are the things which I did not like or which maybe can be improved on.
Mm-hmm.
So, having a communication in any sort of relationship while expressing yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, and not offending the other person is really needed.
Mm-hmm.
So, basically, in a nutshell, I would say assertive communication is the key to express emotions or to express your opinions where you wouldn't hurt or offend the person you're talking to.
And so how do we do that? How do we is it a case of stepping back and taking a breath? What sort of things can someone do when they're in that situation? You start to feel yourself getting
Mm.
emotional. How do you actually step back and go, or what can you do? Is it stepping back, or are there other techniques can you do? Is it breathing? What can you do to actually, if you're starting to feel yourself get emotional? Because as you mentioned before, once you start getting emotional, your brain shuts down a little bit and you're not thinking as,
Mm.
what can a person do in that situation?
Correct. Always stepping back is the best option for some time, because when you are at the peak of any emotion, be it excitement, be it sadness, be it anger, frustration, exhaustion, anything, you're not in the right or ideal space of mind to take any decision, be it small or big. So
Mm,
maybe, never promise someone when you're too happy, because maybe
mm,
that later on you might feel that, oh, why did I make this promise? Like, so for example, you're very happy and you agree for a dinner which you wouldn't usually do. And then
mhm,
you regret it later when you are in your stabilized state of emotions. So that is there. So always take two steps back, see the situation from a distance, look at it from a different perspective. And when you are in a more stable state of mind, try to focus on how can I react. So when I mention assertive communication, it basically means putting forward your opinions with reasoning. Say, for example, if I had to reschedule today's recording,
mhm,
if I would have told you that, I can't make it today because so and so reason, you would shut down at I can't make it today.
mhm.
You wouldn't hear the reason because I'm already not coming, so reason doesn't matter to you anymore. Similarly, so I'm just taking an example.
Yes.
So if in an assertive way, how do I put it? I'm so sorry. I am not feeling well. Can we reschedule it? Is it
Mm,
okay if we do it? So here you're more open to understanding my situation,
mm.
understanding my reasoning. But if we say a no first, after that no, nobody is going to hear your reasoning, even if it is valid or rational.
Yeah. So really you're offering the explanation first before you're actually defining the situation. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and put it in right terms in the way where the other person's feeling is not affected. So I'm not asking you, I want to reschedule it. Can we reschedule it? Will it be possible for you? So these are the terms like rephrasing your thoughts, rephrasing your statements.
Mhm. And you mentioned before about gratitude. When we're talking about how we feel about ourselves, about our life, our situation, how important is gratitude in how we feel about things? Because there's a lot of things we could not have in our life when we probably don't have. If we're certainly if we're comparing to some you pick some billionaire, and there's probably a lot of things you don't have in your life compared to that. But same token too, if you go the flip side, I always compare it to my grandparents. My grandparents were war refugees when they came to Australia, and they came with a suitcase, and that was it. So if I'm ever feeling sorry for myself, I look at that and go, well, what have I got to complain about? I'm pretty lucky, and that changes that. How does that work? Does gratitude really have that much of an impact?
Yeah, it definitely does. I'll take it in two separate sections. First, I'll answer to the gratitude opinion.
Mhm,
So, what gratitude is basically to be grateful about small things that you have in life today. It doesn't have to be that uh, won the first prize in the competition or you've achieved something. It doesn't have to be there. If you have a meal on your table today, be grateful for that,
mm,
because many people do not have that as well. If you're able to have clear vision, clear hearing ability, all five senses, and everything fine with yourself, that's also gratitude. If you've maybe completed going for a workout today, which you didn't do the entire week last time,
mm,
appreciate yourself because it was zero and you came to at least one.
mm,
So that's there. And now coming to a thing that you interestingly mentioned was comparison.
mm,
So we generally tend to compare ourselves with people who are above us. We forget that there are people below us as well and equally standing with us as well.
mm,
So naturally, what do? We compare ourselves with someone who's above us, higher to us.
mhm,
I would say do not compare yourself with anyone, be it higher, be it at an equal state or lower,
mm,
because the lower one will give you some temporary happiness. You'll look upon that person. The equal one might make you feel stagnant, that I'm not unique. This other person is also doing the same thing as I'm doing.
mm,
And if you look at someone higher to you, you'll have self-esteem, self-confidence issues, self-doubt issues.
mm,
So always compare yourself with your past experiences, with your past performance, with your past achievements, because you'll see yourself growing. Maybe at an age of 12, you were less mature, you were less, academically strong. But now, if you see yourself at the age of 20, more maturity, more responsible, more understanding. So you're growing.
mm. I shouldn't do that because I still see myself as 12 years old, so maybe I'm stagnating. So I have a large
No,
Lego collection.
you are growing. I'm sure you're growing. It's just a perspective. Shift
Exactly.
your perspective.
From that, how much of it can we actually set ourselves up to enjoy what is and not make it more difficult for ourselves? Because sometimes if we look at our own conversation to ourselves, and we were then to put a best friend, for example, in that same situation, then have the conversation with a best friend, we'd talk very differently. Normally, if a best friend does something we do, we're very understanding and very supportive. How much of that is, do we need to stop and reframe how we talk to ourselves and treat ourselves like our own best friend?
Yes, positive self-talk is really important, but it's equally difficult to do. Today, if I tell you to go stand in front of a mirror and at least just say three statements about yourself that you feel good, it will be difficult. And it's not just about you, it might be difficult for me as well,
Mm,
because we've never learned to appreciate ourselves, to be proud of our own selves. We always want these appreciations, validations from someone else. As I mentioned earlier, you need to validate yourself, you need to appreciate yourself. Until and unless you do it for yourself, maybe you can't expect for someone else to do it for you. And again, I always suggest people who are unable to do a positive self talk to just imagine your friend in the same situation, or take the situation from a third person's perspective. That will give you a different clarity.
mm,
Because, say, for example, you are in a trouble situation and you can't find a solution to it. Just take two steps back. Think, what if I went with the situation to a friend of mine? What
mhm,
would that friend suggest me to do? You'll
mhm.
get some clarity.
What is it about that? Because I look at my life when I go back, and how is it that we need this validation from others? Where does that come from? Because I don't know where that specifically shifted for me, but I know today, um, not today specific. Well, yesterday specifically, but
Mhm.
it's from.
Understood.
I don't know when it shifted, but every day I think it's freaking awesome. I think I'm awesome. Maybe I haven't done everything correctly. Last week I didn't exercise as much as I probably should have, but I don't tell
Mhm.
myself I should exercise every day. I say I'm going to exercise most days. And last week was a hectic week anyway, and I didn't have the time because I was focused on other things. So I'm not beating myself up for that. This week is a little bit different. And before we did this show, I was actually on the cross trainer and did some exercise, and I feel good. And I'm glad about that. But where does this thing come from that we need that validation to feel external validation to feel good from? Because I'm not sure where it shifted for me exactly. I know um, I listened to there's a Wayne Dyer audio called "How to Be a No Limit Person," and I listened to that
Mhm.
over and over again. He talks about you have this inner counterflame and you like yourself because you are. Um, and I think that finally sunk in. That's what I can put it down to. But what is it why do we need this external validation? Where does that come from?
I would say that comes from the way you were brought up in childhood because you learn whatever you observe and
Mm,
how the environment treats you. You've not learned seeking validation at the age of 20.
mhm,
It's inbuilt. So the small comparisons that, that child in the school is doing so well, or this student is doing well, this friend's son is doing great, this friend's son looks a certain way, he's looking good, he or she's looking good. So
mm,
the parents telling their children that you need to be like this person, only
mm.
then you'll get appreciation, or only then this is validated. So that's coming in from there, the situations, be it teachers, be it parents, grandparents, the environment and the people around you are teaching you to be a certain way, I would say.
So that's where that comes from. It's just something you've learnt from your growing up, and until
Yeah.
we eventually teach everybody to walk around and go, "Hey, you're awesome," and really believe it, we just need to keep spreading that message. Is that what you're sharing?
Yeah, like it becomes too obvious that you've been in an environment where you've always been in a state of you being compared to someone else.
Mm,
You being compared in terms of your peers. They are doing a great work. They're taking this, say for example, a science field. You can't take a commerce because this is a friend of mine whose son has taken this field, so you'll also have to take. So to maintain that social status, to fit in that society, to fit in that
mm.
friend circle. So that pressure comes in from the parents to child, or it's peer pressure also at times. So there can be a lot of reasons where this comes. But to your other question, where it shifted for you, it might be, you've become more mindful of the situation of the
Mm.
present, and maybe you've become more mindful of today to focus on here and now.
How much of that is owning it, the situation, and just accepting that that's the situation and being okay with that? And I'll give an example. It was last week, or no, it was a couple of weeks ago now. I had a really, really big. There was a big week. There's some very, very strong emotional things happen, which were very, very draining. And then I had a business gathering to go to after that. And leading up, there was a few days of that, and then I was wrecked, and I was thinking, do I want to go or don't I want to go? But people saying, come, come, come. So I went, and I just said, look, this is the situation. I laid it out. This is what's happened.
Mm.
I'm exhausted. I'm going to be emotionally flat. And that's how it's going to be. If that's not workable, I'm happy to go. And I didn't say it, but I was thinking, if you don't like it, you can go and get stuffed. Was my thoughts. If you don't accept that that's what I'm feeling at the moment, then you're probably not
Mm.
a friend that I want to have in my life. That was the attitude I took, and it became a good event. Even though I was a bit flat at times, there was times I was flat, but also two people were doing things, and it became a distraction as well, where I actually got but then
Mm.
I was physically drained, and so I went up and I went flat, but it was all okay. It became okay. But I think partly because I wasn't trying to pretend to be something I wasn't. I just said, this is the situation. Let the other people know. They were okay with that. And it went really well. How much of it is it having that, especially for guys, because I mean, we're talking about what is manly, having that
Mm.
courage to say, this is my circumstance right now, and this is what I need for me. How important is that to do that?
It's really important for, I would say, again, catering to men,
Mm,
because with females we do talk to our friends on a daily basis, or maybe weekly basis or whatever. So we have a tendency to express our emotions. I wouldn't generalize all females, but yes, mostly we do have a tendency to just vent out either with a partner, with our parents, with our friends, or however. There's
mm,
a channel for us to vent out.
mm,
But in that space, if I put a male, it's difficult for them, because, again, coming back to having that courage to open up and telling and putting it out that I feel a certain way. I don't feel good today. I just don't want to attend this. It's really difficult for them, because they feel that it's responsibility, maybe, that I have to attend this. What would the other person think if I express my feelings? So I think there's a lot of fear of judgment also from other
mm,
people in terms of males being emotional. The
mhm.
society is being running in a way which is male oriented. I know it's changing, and I appreciate that it's becoming more of both
Mhm.
male and female, but it's still in some way it's patriarchal.
Yeah.
So it's just that it's a set standard. Like, for example, if there's a set standard for a kid to achieve, say, 80%, 90%, here for males it's a set standard. You have to be responsible. You are the bread earner. You have to be strong. You can't express your emotions. So it becomes really difficult in a group of his own close friends also. That
Mm,
person or an individual is not able to express how he's feeling, just
mm.
because of society's pressure that what will my friend think if I become vulnerable.
I love that what you're talking about is that you can't express it, because there's a lot of times, using myself as an example, where I don't want to. I don't want to, and
Mm.
I do what I call gumping, where I record these. I'm down here at the beach house and I have this massive lawn out the back, and I bought myself a self-propelled electric lawnmower. So I still have to walk behind it, but I don't have to push it, which is good because it's on a hill. And there's times where I will just go out there, and sometimes I'll have headphones in because there's a path that goes by so people don't disturb me. And I'll just be in my own thoughts, thinking about things, processing things. If I got something that sometimes the lawn doesn't need mowing, and I'll just go out and go up and down. And I'm like Forrest Gump on a lawnmower going up and down the lawn. And it gives me a bit of solitude, time to process. And I go through that. So I don't need to talk about it because I resolve it in my way. But what you're talking about is someone that doesn't have a way, and they need to be able to open it up. So it's not about how. And what am I hearing that correctly? It's not about how you resolve. If you've got some emotions, that you need to have a way of resolving that. Is that where we're getting to?
I would say in your situation as well, you found out a diversion to not express your feelings. You've found out a way of coping mechanism where maybe you are, in the lawn, and you're using that lawnmower, and you have your headphones and you're satisfied with it, because somewhere that, again, you won't be able to express if I ask you to speak it out to some friend or someone.
Hmm.
So you found your way of coping by doing that activity,
Hmm.
by feeling satisfied that, okay, there is some kind of denial, I would say, that or not denial, but avoiding that emotion. Let that emotion rest. With time, if I do this activity, I'll feel better. I don't have to focus on that emotion. I might be completely off as well, but this is what, taking your example in mind.
Okay, so from that perspective, what you're saying there is from that side of things, it's actually not dealing with the emotion. It's not suppressing, is it? Is that what you're am I
Yeah.
hearing correctly?
Yeah, maybe a lot of people suppress, avoid, or ignore their emotions and get involved in other tasks or
Mhm.
activities just to overcome it. But that's not a healthy coping mechanism, because you are somewhere or the other piling those emotions by avoiding them or putting them in a box or under the carpet.
How does a person know from that perspective you're actually not dealing with the emotion? I mean, if you're feeling at peace with yourself, you sleep very well, you're very comfortable with your
Hmm.
your life. how do you know if that's actually building up inside you then, taking that example from that side of things?
Correct. So, a lot of people do not know because, as you said, they're sleeping well, they're following their daily routine.
Mm,
So they've been used to the fact that avoiding an emotion or keeping that under the carpet is a lifestyle, and it's okay with them because they've never opened up about it. Like, say, for example, let's take a kid who has never expressed his or her emotion since childhood. So
mm,
he or she is of the opinion that expressing an emotion is not something that we do.
mhm,
It's not something that we need to do or we have to do. If we feel an emotion, maybe we can divert ourselves by doing something else.
mm.
So we don't have to deal with it.
And coming back to what you mentioned before about the 4 steps, so it's awareness, acceptance, feeling, and then letting go.
Mm,
Do you so from if I'm hearing you correctly, to let go, you've actually got to talk about it with somebody else. You can't just let it go. Is that right?
correct. You can't just let it go. You need to express your emotions. It could be by self introspection as well. You don't necessarily have to talk to someone, but if there are intense emotions and where you feel that you won't be able to handle it alone,
Mm,
definitely seek for help, seek for assistance. That's needed. But you can do it by yourself also if you're okay by journaling. If you feel great by maintaining that journal and expressing your
mm,
emotions in that journal, it could be in the form of a paragraph, it could be in the form of a poetry, whatever helps you to take those emotions out of your body, out of your system, is a best option because only then you'll be able to accept, you'll be able to let go. See, I don't talk about forgetting because
mm.
whatever happens in our life, there are very less chances that we forget stuff, be it good or bad.
Yes, correct.
But it's about letting go, forgiving it. That's
Mm,
completely in our control. We can forgive, we can let go. Forget, I wouldn't say because that there is rare chances where you forget stuff.
yes. Yeah, so from that, what you're talking about from that perspective, that introspection can be a way of of letting go. And I love the word that you use there, forgiving. So it's forgiving that situation. That how can you explain more about the forgiving component as well for the listeners?
Sure. We can take an example. Say, for example, you were in an incident with your partner or a friend and you had a major fight. You
Mm,
said certain things, the friend said certain things, both of you shouted, bad mouthed at each other, everything happened.
mm,
Now you need to see maybe both of you are not talking since a month, say for example. But
mm,
now you realize that it's been too long. I need to talk.
mhm,
I need my friend back because it's a say 8 year, 10 year long
mm,
friendship. So now you realize, okay, I was angry at that time. I did not feel. Now I think I can have a decent conversation with my friend, where we both can sit and have a discussion and not an argument. So, there, when you communicate, when you resolve each other's misunderstandings, when you understand each other's perspectives, where the other person was coming from and where you are coming from,
mm.
that helps you move on from the situation and forgive. It depends on the relationship also that you hold with the individual, whether you want to forgive them or not.
But does that come to linking between, again, your self-esteem, well, sorry, separating your self-esteem from the behaviors? An example, and for the listeners, they've heard this
Mm,
example before, but when I was younger, I was helping out at a wedding, and I was at the front of the church, and there was a space for the bridal car to pull up, and it wasn't marked, and someone come and parked there. So I've stormed over and I've gone, "What the hell are you parking there for?" And got angry at the person, and they've obviously got upset with their partner and drove off and parked somewhere else. And when I look back at that now, I go, well, that's how I dealt with that then. Not the best way of dealing with the situation, but that's not who I am as a person at that point in time. Um, Again, that's how I dealt with it. Today, if that situation happened again, I would deal with it very,
mm,
very differently. So I'm not beating myself up because I did that. That was, yeah, that was me then. I'm not worried about it. And because I know I'm a good person. And said my
mm.
intention was to look after the bride anyway. And so, is that what we're talking about as an example where you're going, okay, that happened. I can forgive myself for that behavior because it was a behavior, but it's not me as a person. Is that
Correct.
am I understanding correctly?
Correct. Forgiving yourself as well as the other people involved, because most of the times we fail to understand that eh, in this situation, it's great that you could assess it was you, but
Mm.
many times people do tend to blame the situation, tend to blame the other people. So it's moreover forgiving the situation, forgiving other people, than forgiving self. So this, comes very late where you start to forgive yourself, because people generally don't blame themselves.
So is that the key to it? First, you've actually got to recognize that you're part of the problem?
Yes, awareness, as I said, is the first step.
We have that in share.care. The first principle is to take responsibility for yourself. And there's a quote from Sophocles, and he said, it's a hard thing to recognize that you yourself has caused your own problems in life. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but it's something along those lines. So,
Yeah, of course. Because see, in a situation, if two parties are involved, you can't put 100% blame on the other party, because it's equally 50-50, both of your faults that
mm,
the situation has turned out to be.
don't you hate it when you get to a certain age and you start quoting your parents and recognizing they were right? My mum used to say when I was growing up, it takes two to tango. So I think maybe that might have helped as well, that you're part of the problem. Well, I'm part of the problem. Um, how much of when we're looking at ourselves as well, because I think although I do a lot of things, I think inherently I'm a lazy person, and I'd want to do things really, really quickly and fast, and I don't like taking time to do that. And people talk about finding, the positive in a situation. And I was thinking
Mhm.
about that. If you've got to find the positive in the situation, then your first reaction is that it's negative to start with. So you've been working through, okay, why is this happening to me? We talked about why before, but you've got this situation, you're going, you had an expectation, it hasn't turned out this way, and you're all upset. And then you've got to find the positive in it. And all that takes effort. And then I remember from my acting days, in Hamlet, Shakespeare wrote, "Nothing's good or bad, thinking makes it so." And so I was wondering about that. If we just, rather than labeling an event good or bad, we just call it an event and say, how can it serve me? Is that
Mm.
an easier way of dealing with those situations? I know it works for me, but I was just wondering if I'm some weird freak that, maybe it doesn't work for other people.
No, no, that's completely right. And to address your perception of being lazy, the laziest people find the easiest way to do any task. So that's okay. So, yeah, coming back to good or bad, it's a great statement which I also use, that, there's nothing right or wrong, there's nothing good or bad, because it's how you perceive it, how you take the situation to be around yourself. So it's you, your thought process, your perception, your opinion, building a situation to be a certain way.
Mm,
Today, we both can be in the same situations. We both can be in the same movie. You might have a different opinion or a review about that movie. I might have a completely different opinion or a review about the same movie.
mm, love
So
that.
that's individual difference.
Yeah. And so a number of guys we've started off talking about that are feeling lost, lonely, and not having a purpose in life. What can they do to actually go out and say, hey, there is something for me in life, or I can find a purpose, or, I don't need to be lost or lonely. What are steps that they can do to actually move out of that, move out of their basement, so to speak, and stop playing video games?
The best would be just firstly come out of the basement, of course. And yeah, jokes apart. So you can always try to look back at your achievements, and make a list of them, because that will help you motivate towards moving forward, and then making a list of your goals, what you want to achieve. So
Mm,
what you've achieved and what you want to achieve. These two things are really important, which can help you motivate, come out of a situation. If you're feeling low, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling lonely, do reach out for help. But again, if you want some self-help tips, it would be just go back, look back what you've achieved up till now. I'm sure from childhood till the current age, you might have achieved something or the other.
mm,
And say, for example, if you can't find anything, even if maybe you set an alarm for 7 o'clock and you woke up at that time, so that's also an achievement.
mm,
You don't have to look to major achievements. We tend to forget that we are doing something each day which we wanted to, as planned, and we forget, again comes gratitude. We forget that we've done this. We forget to appreciate ourselves. So
Mm.
maybe 2 to 3 things: what you've achieved, what you want to achieve, and self appreciation. I think these three things together can help you at least come out of that basement.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. And Simran, for people that might want to reach out and contact with you, what are the things that you offer and how can people best get in touch with you?
So I work as a counseling psychologist or a therapist, and I do take online sessions. So it's for many issues like depression, stress, anxiety, grief, trauma, relationship and marriage issues, and many more. So you can find out more details about my professional uh, journey as well as contact details in a link that would be provided on my website.
Fantastic. And we'll include that website link in the show notes as well for people to reach out to you. Before we go, what would be, if you wanted people to take away a nutshell or an action or a point of wisdom from you,
Hmm.
what would be, if you were to summarize that, what would that be? What would be that key takeaway that you'd want people to take from this discussion?
I would say live in today, express how you feel, and do not hesitate to put your opinion forward, but of course, in a rephrased manner.
I love that. That's awesome. Simran, thank you very much for taking time to be on the show. It's been so wonderful having you, so much wisdom that you've shared. Really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time.
No, thank you for having me. I was really excited for this, and I've learned a lot from you as well. So, thank you.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.